Addiction is a serious issue, and we take it seriously. This is Road to Recovery with Yonah Budd on 640 Toronto.
I had a friend of mine, OD, passed away like Valentine's Day. We were out here he was out here a lot longer than I, but we were around each other for 4 years. He's like a brother to me.
Data from a new report shows the number of fatal overdoses has increased during the pandemic when compared to the same time period the year before. And while no one is immune, the study shows the people most at risk are those experiencing homelessness and unemployment.
So there you have it. It's a real grim story about numbers of people dying. The numbers from the agency look like 6,214 people suffered opioid deaths in 2020, 17 deaths per day on average, compared to 4,000 back in 2019. Still a big number, but we're up significantly. My guest tonight is a good friend of the show, Minister Tibollo. He's the Minister of Mental Health and Addiction. Minister, welcome. Thank you.
Hello, Yonah. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, nice to have you back on the air, buddy. We took a little hiatus, but we're nice to be back. So let's get right to it. Minister, you know, the numbers are staggering as we look at the number of people suffering from opioid deaths, obviously tainted opioid deaths as it relates to this story anyway. You know, and you and I have talked for years, either personally and on air, about what we're doing, what's the schedule around what we're trying to do to fix this. Is the government doing all the right things from a policies perspective right now to try to get a handle on this? Like, what's the plan when you guys sit around and figure out how to get out of this epidemic now that we're getting on the other side of the one you've been bothered with for the last couple of years?
Yeah. Well, we knew that we had an epidemic or a pandemic with mental health and addictions in the province before COVID-19. With COVID-19, we started making substantial investments in virtual supports because, again, most of the different organizations that were providing services had to go virtual because they were shut down because of the COVID-19. So it exacerbated the problem. But the virtual supports have been extremely helpful from the standpoint of being able to provide supports to individuals. We've got something like 82 or 83,000 people doing virtual cognitive behavioral therapy. We've got our frontline workers on a specific program for them. We are making substantial investments to build that continuum of care. We've spoken about this before, Yonah. We inherited a broken, and I won't even call it a system, problems accessing services, problems with fragmentation, continuum of care issues. And what we've done is we've made sizable investments. We're at $525 million in new annualized funding now. Specifically, we just announced, and we will be giving more detail on a sizable investment, over $37 million in addiction-specific supports, everything from harm reduction strategies to additional beds being publicly funded for people requiring treatment, increasing the use of RAM clinics for individuals, more supports in the north where we are also facing all kinds of issues. It's a serious problem, and it's impacting on every segment of society. The clip that you mentioned about homelessness, well, the social determinants of health, we are investing a sizable amount of money in increasing the amount of housing available for pre-treatment, supportive housing after treatment, individuals coming out from the corrections, looking at diverting individuals to the justice system into programs. We're doing everything we can, but it takes time to think the system and build it and ensure that we have sufficient people to work in the system as well, which is another huge issue, given the need for additional people trained specifically to be able to provide these supports.
But Minister, we're losing people on a daily basis. We scrambled when we were losing bodies to the COVID. Everybody got together, was scrambled. It became a whole thing. Everybody in the country was pulling in the same direction. We don't see that with this situation. And I think the thing that concerns me the most is that people believe that those using drugs, for the most part, they're going to end up killing themselves anyway. So it's not a big deal. Maybe you need to explain explain to people, as I'm trying, that we're not talking about people necessarily homeless people living in cardboard boxes under a bridge. We're talking about, your lawyers, your accountants, your doctors, school teachers, caregivers, frontline workers. If someone started with an opioid prescription, they're now, not getting their prescription anymore. They like their drugs too much and they can't find a way out. What are we doing in the short term to help those that are struggling immediately?
Well, we're doing everything we can, and we're increasing the amount of supports that are available. We're utilizing, the mobile intervention crisis teams more throughout the province. We are going to be announcing very shortly. We've spoken in general about it, but a pilot project where we're going to have mobile health units that will be in the community. We're investing more with respect to withdrawal management, which is extremely important in the continuum of care. Yeah. You're right. There are too many people dying from drugs and addictions, and you're right. It's not just the people that are homeless. 30% of the people that have died this last year in the total of the people that died, 30% of them are construction workers who are managing pain using opioids. And we're seeing a supply now of hydromorphine becoming readily available on the street as well, which is bringing new people to try and experiment with drugs.
Yeah, I mean, hydromorphine is what we try to use in harm reduction as the first phase to get somebody off of opioids. So now that it's finding itself on the street, so with respect, sir, all the clinics and added treatment programs and online capabilities. I know you guys are chasing it down big time, doing the best you can. But it's the street level stuff. When you're talking to me about this mobile stuff, you and I have been talking about it for a couple of years at least. I think that's brilliant, and we thought so when we first talked about it. But when if you didn't have the red tape that I know you have, as with any other politician in any other ministry, you have the same red tape as anyone else in government. Doesn't it frustrate you though sometimes, Minister, that you know what needs to happen? Because people need to understand, by the way, that Minister Tibollo has a background in working in addictions. He is studying to become a therapist, a PhD in working in addictions. This is not just some guy with a gifted position from the government. The minister is someone who I appreciate, respect, and admire for if he's able to, you got to understand this guy knows what he's talking about. So, Minister, when we're talking about street worker to street worker here, it's frustrating as hell, right? What would you do in the short term if you didn't have all the red tape you're faced with?
Well, and you're 100% right. It's extremely frustrating when you see that there are things that you can do immediately, and it just takes time to work their way through in terms of ensuring that you are doing the right thing. So the evidence-based, ensuring that the appropriate amounts are being invested. To me, the most important thing we could be doing is breaking the logjam when it comes to treatment. Right. We do not have enough treatment options. And when I say treatment, that could be the full spectrum from outpatient day treatment to having nurse practitioners attending at people's homes, to having social workers responding to calls as opposed to police officers, to short-term residential treatment, mid length, and of course long-term residential treatment where necessary. To not have enough in that continuum, what we're doing is with harm reduction, really we're putting people on palliative care. I hate to say it that way, but I know. We wouldn't put a cancer patient on hydromorphine protocol for any indefinite period of time in the hope that you're going to find space. And so, and this is what people want. They see these treatment options. So I'm working really hard to build as much capacity as possible to break the logjam. And I think that, and again, a lot of people automatically assume that means abstinence. And in most cases, it does mean abstinence. But we also have to remember there are some people that will never be able to return to abstinence. So we need to keep the spectrum and our minds open to what we need to do on an individual basis. One step will not fix the problem. We need to put all the options on the table and work through them and follow the individual from the point where he or she says, I need help, to the point where we have recovery to the greatest extent possible for that individual.
Okay, this was Minister. I do appreciate, and you're 1,000% right on. We'd love to have you on again in a couple of weeks if that's okay. We're just running out of time here. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I feel your pain. I'm so happy you're doing what you're doing, and it's not someone else. I have a lot of faith in you, brother, and we'll come out the other side. When we come back from break, we're going to talk to somebody who started with pain medication for pain, and then his whole life turned upside down. It's a great story. Turns out nice. There's a decent ending after. Want to hear from you, 416-870-6400, if any of this rings a bell. This is Yonah Budd, 640, Toronto.